Good morning, everybody from snowy Maine. My name is Joe Schmidt. I'm the Social Studies Specialist for the Maine Department of Education. Today, I am hosting a session on no tech and integration in social studies education. Our featured guest speaker today presenting with me is Jenn Lagasse. She is a third grade teacher at Ellsworth Elementary School. Some of the resources we're going to talk about today, Jenn has played a pivotal role in the development of. Jenn serves, she's currently in the teacher leader cohort and has done a lot of work this year. And with the recent changes in distance and remote learning, Jenn has been a person who's been a go-to in helping me develop some of these elementary resources. So some of the resources I'm going to share, they're going to seem familiar because you probably would have seen them on Jenn's sheets. Because we've been going back and forth and trying to flesh out a kind of a PK through 12 progression. And so Jenn's been a wonderful thought partner in helping the development of that. So if you see any similarities, I will be upfront and honest, they probably came from Jenn first. So just so you are aware of that. So with that all being said, I'm going to let Jenn take the floor first and give some of the thought process to what her vision is with choice boards. I'll follow up with some additional resources and thought processes. And we had the wonderful idea that since it was a snow day and there's a lot of electricity out, that this is the perfect environment to be talking about teaching kids with no tech access. So Jenn, you have hosting abilities. You can take it from here.
Thank you, Joe. So I decided to do this because knowing that we were going to be doing remote learning, most of my kids don't have internet access, or even if they do, they don't have devices. I have some families that have numerous children and only one device, so sharing devices just wasn't going to be feasible. I wanted students to have choices over their learning while they were going to be home. This is a time where they don't have control of their environment, what's going on. So this would be the perfect opportunity for them to have control of what's going on at home, in their life, just anything really. I actually do a choice board, a similar thing just for homework, which is they have a whole sheet and they get to pick 5 activities from that sheet for their homework. And it's just typical, some of it's just life skills, like they have to help family cook dinner, or even one of them is just playing outside, just to help with more family time. It's not so much homework. I don't want kids sitting at the table crying over something that's hard and their parents don't understand it, or the kids don't remember how to do it at school. It's more just focusing on family time. So that's how I developed the choice boards for this remote learning time. I did them for all subjects. So we're going to focus on the social studies one. So the ones that I did, the first batch was the science and social studies because it was a quick, we didn't have much time to figure it out. It was a quick, get this out, send them home. We didn't have much time with our kids. So this next one that we haven't sent out our next batch of materials yet, but this next one will actually be what we do with our third graders for the third trimester, which focuses on our Hancock County government, which is nice. And I've received a lot of positive feedback because the parents like the fact that it includes the whole family. It's not just the third graders. The kindergartner can be included in it, or the older student can be included in it. It's just, yeah. So I can share it with you and then let you ask any questions that you have, and then we can go from there. Do you have questions before I share my screen? Okay. This is the social studies. So these are the 4 strands: civics and government, personal finance and economics, geography, and history. And these are based on the new social studies standards. Um, and I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory. And what I love about it is these are things that the kids can do at home. And we can't really do, I mean, we can, but it's easier for them to do it at home and have great conversations. And it's one-on-one. It's things that we can't really do in the class. I mean, we can, but we can't go in as depth in the classroom. Um, so with civics and government, like they can call their local police or fire department and interview members about their jobs and their duties. Um, they can even just have a conversation with their parents rather than calling, because this is a pretty crazy time. We have the map of fire safety plan, which sometimes there's the conversation in the lower grades. I don't remember, maybe first grade is when they do fire safety. And then they can do the map and actually practice it. They can have a fire drill at home. And then I made sure to mention, don't forget the essential map features like compass, rose, and a key. And we have plan a class field trip. I am currently working on that right now because, you know, we take our kids on field trips, but sometimes they're not really interested. So it'd be nice to see what their thoughts are and what they would want for the perfect field trip. Play a game without rules. What happens when you don't have rules? Why do we have rules? Then there's using a specific budget for either a day or a week. Plan meals for your family, which is great because it works with math also. And figure out what meals can be purchased for less than that amount. So with that one, I've contacted the local grocery stores and they've generously donated their sales flyers. So I can send those home so the kids don't have to use internet to look up the prices of items. So with that, I've also done, I've added options on the math choice board where they can do math activities, where they can do a grocery list, or they can create a menu, or there's many, I mean, there's so many options that you can do with just a sales flyer. And a lot of the families don't really get access to sales flyers. So it's something that they can all sit down at the table and work on it.
Jen, can you speak to a little bit, like, I know there's a wide variety in what choice boards can look like, but I know that you kind of have some different criteria in place when it comes to different links or resources, like you said, that you're getting the flyers for kids. Can you share a little bit about like your thought process and really kind of defining what low tech, no tech means when you're trying to think about making sure all kids have access?
So I guess just want to make, so I've seen a lot of choice boards where there's an actual link on it to get more research or more information, but that's not helping because how are they going to get that information? We have students without, they still don't have technology. So I mean, it's what they have at home. It's just basic information. They don't need to look anything up. They don't need to do any more research. Research, yes, but it's just what they have available to them. I don't know.
And you'll see, you guys will see later on, well, I'll show one of my things where I have like a no tech and use tech options, but where you can hit on different pieces, right? There are ways to take kids deeper into the learning if you so choose. I just know that Jen has expressed concerns about the tech access of her students, and instead of reinforcing that divide of, well, some of you can have this learning and some of you who have technology can have this one. I mean, if you see throughout it's that same learning for each kid. And as you go through, there's a lot there, you're hitting different standards, you're hitting key skills in the different areas. And so I just know that's one of those things that Jen's been adamant about. Like, you can do it a bunch of different ways, but Jen really is sticking with that no tech idea that a kid right now without electricity, without internet, could still get up in the morning and still do most, if not all, of these pieces. Jen, there's a question. What do you require weekly? Is there a number that they need to finish each week? And then grading question mark is in at the end.
So our district hasn't said anything about grading as of yet. And as far as requirements, I have not set anything for requirements. I pretty much leave it up to the family. I did send out a schedule for those families that need some sort of structure. I have one family that, you know, the boy, he really enjoys doing, you know, he knows that we do math every morning and we do social studies on certain days, and then he has art on Mondays, so he likes to do his art activity on Monday. So it's really a personal preference for the family. I'm not going to be in their home and like navigate what they need to do. These are just their choices and their options. So it gives them a chance to, maybe today they want to do a math and a social studies, or that's why I give such a wide variety of activities. I do have at the top, don't forget to post your learning to Seesaw. So those students that do, I use Seesaw. So for my students that do have access to technology, if they are drawing a map, they can take a picture and post it on Seesaw, so I know that they're out there. More than 50% of my kids don't have access, so it's still nice to see the ones that are doing their learning and their activities to post it. Some of them get on and read to me. I read to them. So as far as grading and stuff, we haven't been given a direction on what we're doing with that.
Does anybody have other questions for Jen? Otherwise, I think one thing that might be helpful is to maybe kind of go through each of the strands. And I'm just wondering if there's ideas from the group. Do they see something that Jen could possibly add? Do you see something that you would take for your kids? Caitlin, I'm happy that you're here because I know Jen's got a couple openings in the bottom for her personal finance and economics. And I told her we had a personal finance and economics rock star coming. And a couple people are asking if you can share the link. And Kelly has asked the question about so that you're not collecting the kids' work. And I believe that's what you had said, right?
That was kind of my question too, is if you collect it, like if the kids drawed out a map, if they returned it to you, or some of the work that they did.
We're not taking anything back as of right now. I mean, that's a district decision if you're taking.
Because our school is, so.
Yep. So you can take the work back. Yeah, I get that's for the accountability. I guess you can. It would be nice to see. That's why the ones that do have technology, I love to see their work, and then the ones that don't, it breaks my heart that I don't get to connect with them. But this is just, you know, it's the reality of it that, you know, today was the perfect example. I woke up this morning, didn't have power, and I know there's a lot of people out there that don't have power, but then, or, you know, or even just the internet is down. And then this is the chance to say, well, these are how these families are all the time, occupying and trying to distract these kids with no technology. And what are they doing? This is the perfect time for them to just learn. It's just learning. It's normal. It's what we do in the everyday world.
Jen, would you be able to share a link to the folder or the socials? I told Jen she had to focus on the social studies ones, but she does have a folder of others. So I don't know if people would like to see that or where they'd like to go, if you'd like to have a discussion. Okay, I just asked a lot of questions. Okay, so how about this one?
Can you slow down? Remember, I'm still recovering from a concussion.
Here are your options. Would you like to discuss one of these, like the social studies one, kind of as a group to think through it a little bit more? Or that's question one, or would you prefer to see her other options across the other content areas? That'd be option 2. So can you show me either 1 or 2, or put it in the chat box, 1 or 2? Do you guys want to discuss social studies as a group, or do you want to see her other ones? We've got a 2, we've got a 2, 2, 2, 2's 1 and 2. Okay.
Sorry, Joe.
So yeah, why don't we take a look at the other ones just so people can get an idea. And then Gina said, then 1, then we'll come back to 1.
I can do my, I don't know, science, maybe?
Just go right down the line. We see literacies next.
So literacy, they're all, so keep in mind, they're all a work in progress. This is a labor of love. I can pick out a few. So my literacy, I'm combining this with writing. So just a simple, my 3rd graders love to tell jokes. So I just want them to tell me a joke, even if they can hop onto Seesaw or write it down, or however they can do it. I'm sure they could probably do a whole list in their journal of doing jokes. 3 puns. I did give me an example of onomatopoeia. Can they do more than 1? I hate being read to, so I don't want to read to you guys. Change the ending of a story or a book that they've read.
How about this, Jen? Instead of reading, I know you don't like, can you pick your favorite one in each column?
My favorite one, okay. So my favorite one in this column is make a creation using Legos, and then list the steps someone would have to follow to make a creation that looks just like yours, because we all know how much following directions is important. This one would be I was in a Zoom meeting, in a literacy Zoom meeting, and another teacher helped me with this idea, and that's my favorite. I can't wait. Write a story about what might happen in the refrigerator when the door is shut and the food comes to life. I'm hoping that my kids run with that one. And then I started this column, this row, for their writing, and it's going to be the would you rather. My kids love pickles and I don't like them, so they're always joking around with me. So I want them to do, would you rather eat pickles or drink Miss Lagasse's coffee? And then this one would be I just want them to read. So make a fort using blankets and chairs, and then enjoy a good book.
Kaylin wants to know where you get your ideas from, personally or internet resources?
It's a combination of both. Yeah, it's a combination of both.
I know Jen referenced being in one of the ELA ones, and I wish Leslie was here. We've done a lot of office hours where we've had a lot of these discussions as well.
Yeah, it's a lot, and conversations with other teachers, like Leslie was in here earlier. So I've had conversations with Joe, like, hey, what do you think about this? Or there was one in here. Oh, this one I added yesterday, show someone you care with a personal letter. Just ironically, yesterday I got my book box from Scholastic, and it included envelopes and sending mail is a hug in an envelope. It actually included postcard, note cards and envelopes. So I'm going to send that home with them and put stamps on the envelope so they can send someone mail. So I was excited that that came in there just to add to it. And so it's a lot of conversations with other people, or just cruising the internet looking for things. or I have a college freshman, and sometimes I'll run ideas by him and say, hey, what do you think about this? And sometimes he'll help me out, sometimes.
Well, I want to make sure we can circle back to social studies. So yeah, let's, there was definitely consensus in the group that we want to talk social studies as well. So
all right.
What's your favorite math one in each column?
My favorite math one is, I'm just going to go straight to the bonus, learn military time. That's it. I want them to learn military time. Let's see. Write about a day without measurement and what it would be like. I want them to plan a dinner party. So I'm in the process of working on that one. It's a whole, it's going to have all the subjects, from members of the community to planning a menu, planning a recipe. It's a long list of what it takes to plan a dinner party. Doing an invitation, all of it. We'll go back to this one. Use a grocery store ad to plan what you would buy if you had $35 to spend at the store and make dinner for your family, which can go back to the dinner party. Okay, we're done with math. Science is our third trimester, which is forces in motion. This one was fun to do. The make your best paper airplane, fly it 3 times and measure its distance. So that goes back to our math. The draw a map of your playground and describe how you use different forces and motions on the different pieces of equipment. If you have dominoes, set them up for a chain reaction, the domino effect. And then this last one is really exciting. I have to give Joe some credit for this one. Use items around your home to set up a chain reaction similar to what you would do with dominoes. So it would be the Rube Goldberg. So I'm hoping that our kids are going to get iPads next week. The district is sending them out. I'm hoping the kids that have access, have internet access, but just don't have devices, will be able to do this and show me, take a video and send to me how they do a Rube Goldberg. So I can't wait. Hopefully their parents will get involved. It's going to be messy, but hopefully it will be really fun. Now we'll go back to social studies.
Does anybody have any questions for Jen for any of those? Kim, I saw you were very excited to go to the math one. I know you've got a math background. Does anybody have questions for any of the other ones for Jen?
Can I stop sharing, or do you want me to leave this up?
Can you go back? Sarah asked, what about the science 2? You were done. That one went a little fast. Maybe just to see that one.
Enjoy a game of soda or water bottle bowling. I made sure to apologize to the parents ahead of time.
Anybody have any questions about the science, math, ELA ones? Oh, got it. Okay. If we go back to the social studies one, then is there anybody that wants to talk through any of these or do your own thoughts? Again, because Jen has them sorted by the 4 strands. And I know on the bottom, she's got a couple openings. So I told her that we could put it out to the group to see if the group could crowdsource one, but also just thinking about your own ideas for your different grade levels. Is there any of these that you could see adapted for kids at your grade level or that you'd be working with? Any thoughts?
Hi, Jen.
Hi.
So in our cohort meeting on, I don't know, yesterday or the day before, kind of days blend together, for personal finance teachers in Maine, we were talking about some different ideas, and then Joe kind of threw me in there and said, you should write these down. So I wrote some down that we had been talking about during our meeting. Some of them are a little bit higher level, but I thought I'd just mention them anyways, where the group is at, or this group right now is at different age levels. But we talked about looking at advertisements for cars, and is it like a really good deal? They are, flashing these free $500 if you buy this car, or 0% financing for 63 months. Like looking into it, reading fine print, and to see if it is an actual good deal, or maybe some of the spots where people might get hung up and get charged more. We talked about what logos you have in your house. So like on the fridge, I have a calendar from Machia Savings Bank for the whole year, and it will be up on my fridge the whole year. So kind of going around and seeing what kind of logos are in your house. And then I kind of expanded that with seeing what different types. So, is your closet full of shirts that say Under Armour with the symbol? Are there, do you have tote bags for TJ Maxx and it says TJ Maxx on it? Kind of looking around your house, not just in one location like the closet, but all around the house to kind of tally up how many you have of a category. And then I noticed on one of your choice boards that you had a couple different games to play. And you could add playing Monopoly or Payday or Life into the financial education section as well. I think those were, and like with the stimulus check that's going to be coming out, how would they send, or how would they spend their stimulus check if they were going to get one? So those were some ideas that we came up with.
I'm a little leery about the stimulus check, just because it's not, like, in my own personal home, I wouldn't talk to my child about that. Like, it is, especially third grade, maybe the older grades, because they, like, yeah, I don't, for myself, I don't know how my parents would react to that, because I mean, I don't know. But I do like the logos and the games, and I always, some of these things I really try and keep my families in mind. This year I pulled out board games, and some kids had never seen board games or played some of the board games. So I wonder if they have access to Payday or Life. So I really try and keep in mind, when I'm doing like low tech, no tech, what do they have available? Even for the measurement, I was talking to Joe and said, I am nervous about doing the measurement for math, because even thinking of myself, I don't even own a ruler in my house. So I can't expect some of these children to have rulers. So I went online and found a printable ruler and printed it on cardstock to make sure that they have a ruler, because I think sometimes we take for granted what we do have and what some of our children have. Because that was my first thought was, okay, I'm asking them to measure items in their home, but I don't even have a ruler in my house. So are my kids gonna have a ruler? So I'm always thinking of, when I'm adding things to my boards, thinking bare minimum, like what do they have? What do they not have? What, is it something I'm gonna have to send home? Like, am I going to have to go back to the school and scrounge through their desk and get the class pack of crayons and send a sandwich bag of crayons and pencils? And I mean, I just really, if we're doing low tech, no tech, I just really want to make sure that we have the bare it's the bare minimum. I know they're going to have an empty water bottle or soda bottle, or hopefully they have Dominoes. It's just, I get nervous with some of these activities. So I try and keep it bare minimum to the materials that are needed.
Kim, you have your hand up?
Yep, I do. So a couple of things. I love how much you think about no tech. That it just makes me feel better. I teach high school, and yet my kids don't have rulers at home. So I know for a fact a quarter is 1 inch. I used it in the military. I love that you did military time, by the way. That was a big deal for me. I have an idea, and I don't know if it would work for your little ones, but I could see my high schoolers and probably middle schoolers doing it, but in geography, maybe a topography map where their steps are involved, and instead of coloring different heights, they use dots or slash marks on their map. I'm not sure if you could explain that to an elementary kid, but you know, from here to the kitchen or here to your bedroom, what kind of height did you increase or decrease? I mean, they could do a bar graph. They could do a topography map if they're, you know, if they're high schoolers, or as just an idea I had that I thought was pretty low tech.
Yeah, and I think that's what's great about this is it can be differentiated for every grade level. Like, so there's the map, you can add you can change it for your high school kids. So I have the map feature, so draw a map where you live and the immediate surroundings. So then you could add on to that what you need for your high school kids. Does that make sense?
Kelly's put some ideas in the chat about using a regular deck of cards on playing games with those. Make the largest number you can using 3 cards, multiplying first 2 cards was the highest product. Sarah Brown said that she sent all of her kiddos crayons, pencils, sharpeners, erasers, dry mark, and a die in their first packet, so they have all the supplies. So she's working with that. And then Sarah D has a question.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm wondering, for third graders, like, does it make sense? I mean, we're living through an historic time, a global pandemic. It's very frightening. And I've read things where historians have actually suggested that people write their personal accounts of what it's like to live through this time. So I'm wondering how you could do that with third graders without scaring them. Like, how much information do they have about the pandemic? What do you assume? What do you tell them?
So
Yes, Joe.
Joe could answer that, but I also, before, in their first packet, they all were given a like composition notebook, and I told them just to journal, write anything, everything, their thoughts, their feelings, write to me, write me a letter, tell me what they did. We've been journaling all school year, so they have a sense of how to do that. And then my students that can access tech, we have Zoom meetings and we chat, and they chat with each other. So that's been a good processing. So that's how I've had my kids do journaling. But Joe can answer that much better than I can.
I'm going to take your screen from you, Jen.
Oh, yeah. You want me to stop share? Oh,
I grabbed it. So one of the things I want to show, let's make sure I get the right page open. I've got too many pages. I think this is the right one. No, what do I have open?
You have the no tech survey.
Oh, okay, there it is. So if you go to this page, main.gov DOE continuity of learning, I will drop this in the chat box. If you go into this page, and the reason I raised my hand, I have examples here, and you'll see there's a no tech level and a use tech level for each of the steps. and there's an integration piece with career and ed development. There's math pieces. But I'll go down here. So they're in all 4 content areas. We saw the 4 content areas in Jenn's piece. And so I have the same kind of framing, but in this history example, we said it's time for your students to serve as historians, record what is going on, right? So some sort of journaling for 1 week. I could probably edit this that just says ongoing. But different ways to have them think about it. Start off by like, what unique talents do they have? Because it doesn't always necessarily have to be a writing prompt. You can have kids who are better off with drawing or that type of stuff. And that'd be the way they could take their notes as well. They could do a poem a day. You could change up some of that stuff. And so the no tech option, right, it could just be that writing or sketching, using technology. It might be taking photographs or doing digital presentation. Again, thinking about the grade level. When all of these were done, they were done with the idea that we might get kids at all over the place. Like, right, Jenn did hers for 3rd grade, and it can kind of be differentiated up and down a little bit. Mine at some levels meant to be done like K-12, PK-12, and a teacher looking to see what would work for their students. And so I've had this question come up a little bit about like, how much do we talk to the kids about what's going on? And I use the old Randy Pausch quote from the last lecture that when there's an elephant in the room, you have to talk about it. The kids know something's going on. And so I think that there is that level of having to address it, but then talking with teachers, like, so Leslie, who was on here earlier, she teaches like ancient civilizations, and they were talking about the plague, the Black Death. And she's like, I'm worried they're going to make a connection. I'm like, I'm pretty sure they're going to make a connection here. And so just talking about it, but then, you know, there's different levels. Like, I think you can address the topic and not talk about number of lives lost or the mortality rate, or, right, if you're going with the older kids, like I'm thinking Kim, who I know does a lot of math, right? And so if you have those discussions, you could get a lot of math. Like if you go to the Johns Hopkins website, I mean, there's a ton of math in there. There's a lot of data points. There's mapping in there. But with younger kids, you wouldn't necessarily have to take it that route. But you could just say like, okay, you know, we're now doing remote learning. Something's different in the world today. How do you feel about that? Like that can be part of it. How have the feelings about the people you talk to changed over time? This is a big historical thinking component that I highlight as you go through here, that like you have to put things in context. How people are thinking and feeling on day 1 to day 5 to day 10 to day 15. I mean, those things continue to change.
Joe, sorry, real quick. I do have one of those in my, like, how have you changed since March to now? Like, how have you changed? How has school changed? That's in one of my, that's in the ELA, my literacy board.
And that's one of those things, like if we talk about these big, broad, sweeping social studies things, that's something kids are going to deal with basically every time they talk about history, right? Our country has changed over 250 years. The feelings about, you know, especially with older kids, they can tackle this, but younger kids, you know, they have that piece of understanding, like we used to have enslaved people, and there was people that thought that that was okay. And like that, those feelings have changed, right? Like those, because it's one of the things they talk about when you do historical fiction. Like a lot of the books have like, you know, a 10-year-old in the Civil War or a 10-year-old in the American Revolution, right? That the perspectives of a 10-year-old in 1776 or in 1861 are different than a perspective of a kid today. And so there's, I know one of Jenn's is like 100 years ago versus today, right? They can just think about how those different things have evolved and changed. And you don't have to get super deep into, I think, the details of COVID-19, but you can have them still think about these same ideas. If they're able to watch the news, you know, I would say watch 2 different channels. Like watch the 5 o'clock and then the 6 o'clock, and just like what's different about them. Even if, you know, again, if it's a younger kid, what was the first news story on each one? And did they highlight different things? Like, right, what is that? Because the source does matter. And you wouldn't maybe get super deep into that, but you will, those kids, as they get older, you will get super deep into the sourcing matters and when was it written. You know, they can look to say, is this an informational piece or more of an argumentation piece? Because Doug Buell just, he always says, social studies is just argumentation. That's all we do. And so are we laying out, right? You can have the same bit of information and somebody might say, you know, this is the worst thing that's ever happened because XYZ. And somebody might say, things are getting so much better because the numbers are down, right? There's so many, what's the old Mark Twain saying is, there's lies, damn lies, and statistics. And I always say, like, you can prove anything with statistics, right? If you have the numbers, it's how do you want to move those numbers around to do them? If there's, you know, 50 cases today, and that's less than yesterday, is that good? Right? Some people say, no, that's 50 new cases. Some would say, well, no, that's better though, it's less. I mean, so you can have them, again, thinking on the different levels, think about the information they're getting. What does it mean? How is your neighborhood changing, right? Looking around, there's different hours. We had a meeting the other day where we're like, yep, I'm gonna have to run tomorrow because my one store is opening for, you know, 3 hours to, you know, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Like, those are monumental pieces. And if you can just have kids do that thinking, do that recording. I have one teacher who's already made contact with a historical society that says, if I collect all my students' journals, can we do something with it? And one of the things that I've often given as an example, again, depending on the grade level, is if you have them writing every day, or say have them write or collect something every day, right? Maybe one day it's my own personal feelings. Maybe the next day it's a summary of the news they watched. Maybe the next day they clip out a news article, right? There's different ways that they can get the information. If you're going to collect something from them, instead of having them turn in their journal of 4 weeks, 6 weeks, or whatever, have them put together a final piece that includes only 5 of their quotes, 3 newspaper clips, 2 summaries of headlines, right? You can boil it down. Because I say one of my favorite books, most interesting books, was in Wisconsin. There was a series of teacher protests, and they pulled this book together, and there's no original content. It was a series of, they had news articles from the major newspapers, then they had bloggers who became prominent during this time, then they had tweets, and they tell this entire narrative of, you know, like the 6 or 8 weeks, not through writing anything new, but by compiling what was already there. And it was such, for me, it's such a powerful piece. I felt like I was reliving the entire piece because of the words they picked, right? The kids might not want their quote from Tuesday, maybe the newspaper from Tuesday or whatever. I mean, so there's just different ways to continue to not only develop their own primary sources, but different ways to check in and do that. And so some of that's here in this history example. I do want to highlight some of these other ones as well. In geography, and again, there's a no-tech kind of component to it. There's an integrated component to it. Have them plan a trip. You heard Jen talk about planning a field trip. This one, you know, you're talking about longitude and latitude. You're talking about physical and human features, right? Make it part of a science unit. If that fits your kid. What's the difference between a mountain and a river and a lake and an ocean? Okay, now where is the nearest mountain, river, lake, and ocean? Where are those things? Can you have them get out, you know, the old 1 inch, which we know is a quarter, right? A quarter is 1 inch. 1 inch equals 100 miles. Okay, well, how many miles then? That's simple math, but it's still math. You know, we're going to round off the nearest 100, round off the nearest 1,000. There's journaling components. Do they see other places like this world language pieces? Are there cities in Maine that have Native American components to their naming? French history to their naming? Are there towns in Maine, right? There's the famous sign that's, you know, got, oh, you can go to Mexico and Peru and Poland, right? Those names have global connections to what they're doing. And you can think about all those things. There's a lot of budgeting that kids can do. Looking at what do the flyers say? What is my budget? Where am I going to spend my money? What is the stock market doing? Again, what are your kids? The kids might not do a stock market in 3rd grade, but they can think about savings. I want to buy a $20 game. If I can save 50 cents a day, how many weeks would that get me to? Or if I get an allowance, right? Thinking about those different pieces to it. And I always love, especially for the younger kids, the advertisements part, because they're bombarded by advertisements. And like we heard from Caitlin, it's not just on TV, right? You turn around everywhere in your house. How many logos do you have? Whether you're wearing them, they're on your feet, they're on your refrigerator. Are kids aware of how many times they see a commercial? Does that make a difference? Do they have saving plans, right? Like, oh, it's my 3rd time at Dunkin' Donuts, so I get a free donut. Here's my punch card, right? You know, we don't have punch cards so much anymore, but there's so many incentive programs that you can do. And then Jen had talked about 3rd trimester for her is Hancock County government. Well, kids can be involved, again, thinking about the different branches of government. What is the role they're doing in with those pieces? What is the role the government plays in your life right now, right? I mean, I think now is a perfect time to talk about kids at all levels. What does government do? Because they're doing all sorts of things right now. It's meaningful to them. If 6 months ago you had asked kids, well, what does the state government do for you? I don't know. But I think we're seeing a lot of that, right? And they may agree with some of it, they may disagree with some of it, but you're still seeing the role that that they do with that. And I love this piece here at the end. How can your student be involved in student government beyond what's going on right now? Does your school have a student council? Can you make your own little political platform? This We the Voters group gives you like six steps that kids can do to be more engaged in their learning as well. So thank you, Caitlin. I'm sorry we're going a little bit over time, but Jen had so many good ideas. But yeah, so there's things like that. So we're thinking through that lens. I do have on the website, if you go to that continuity of learning page, I've got links here, and here's what it looks like. So you would look at your grade level and then think about what subject area you'd want to teach them. So if it's civics and government for grades 4 through 6, here's some different ideas. Personal finance and economics, 1 through 3, here's some ideas. History for pre-KK, here's some ideas there. And we've got the same setup and the same idea for 7 through 12. Civics, government, personal finance, economics, geography, and history. We heard about a topographical map. You know, can high school freshmen draw a topographical map? And then this last little part, something I'm working on is, so I was put on a team for 6 through 8, but could you give kids one project that would hit like just about all the pieces? And so this idea is oftentimes in middle school, we do ancient civilizations. So, is this completely no tech? No, because kids might have to do research in different components. So if you were really worried about that tech level, you may have to pull some of these pieces in and out. But if they were to do a newspaper of like, let's just say the Greek Empire, and I said, I see the chat room, can we access? Yes, Kim, the one link I shared, and I can share all this again at the end, I'll show you all the links. So the low tech and no tech, they're at the top of this continuity of learning page. They're right here. This one is currently still in draft form, but hopefully soon it will be done. And it's just that idea of what are things that are in a newspaper. You could build a map of every place that's mentioned in your newspaper. You could say, in our next episode or in our next issue, we're gonna interview Caesar. The questions we're gonna ask them, right? Because you probably don't want to do a whole biography, but can you say the 5 tough questions we're gonna ask them are, and you could preview what those answers might be. You could do a letter to the editor, right? No, we should not be going to war with Persia or whatever that might be. You could do advertisements. There's always a lot of math in advertisements, right? 20% off, or we've got 2 acres for sale for $1,000. That's 5 square feet $1, or anything like that. Or we've got a loan information, right? How do you build in those math? You could have them do a recipe of the locally sourced meat, fish, fruit, and vegetables. What can you get in Italy? What type of food might you find there? And could you do a recipe with that? And it's the job of a chef, or there's fractions or tablespoons. The weather of the region, what's it like year round? A newspaper logo, write a new song. What might a new song in ancient Greece be? What would the lyrics be? Because you sing a song about that. A word of the day, right? A lot of our words have Greek and Roman prefix, suffix. Are those things still being used nowadays? I'll get back to all the questions, everybody. I'm sorry. Comic strip. What was life like as a soldier? A history piece. What help wanted ads would show up? in Greek and Roman times? What type of jobs would they be having? What were the health issues? I do like this one, like when we had sports on TV, right? ESPN would say 7 o'clock, it's the basketball game, 9 o'clock, it's the baseball game, 10. What would a workout, what would that schedule look like in, ancient times? What were the sports they were playing? What was the physical activity? Like you could do, tune into ESPN, like Roman numeral 5 to check out running at 1 o'clock, javelin at 2:30, the lion. I mean, whatever those type of things they might be doing. Those are all things that you could include in that type of work. And if a kid were to build out this whole paper with all these different components, they've done reading, writing, they've done map skills, they've done science and weather, they've done math, they've thought about prefixes and suffixes of Greek and Roman and Latin words. They've thought about being a soldier. They've thought about being a chef. They've thought about jobs. They've done some math. They've drawn a logo. They've drawn a comic strip. They've written a song. I mean, there's so many different components. And if you look at this, and I understand again, like that no tech or low tech, like kids might need resources to answer some of this, obviously. But this is one sheet with no links. And if a kid did this well, like, is that 4 weeks of like, I don't know, like if they were to do an hour a day or half an hour a day, I think to do this well would take a kid a good amount of time, and they would be doing all those pieces. And so this idea was, if I got to talk to my kids one more time, right, and I didn't know what they would have, work on something like this. I'm going to check back to the comments. Okay, so I can do, here's the links. Here is the pre-K through 6. Here is the this is the 712. The ancient times, I don't have that linked out anywhere yet. What else were the other questions? Thank you. Will you still be working on rewriting the standard? Let me stop with this then. Oopsie. Let me bring my piece back up. Who has questions? That's Sarah. Sarah, the standards are all done for social studies. So that rollout, everything went in and was approved on April 19th of last year. I did a rollout of trainings and stuff this past fall. We were in the process of like curricular rollouts in the spring right now. But what's in there, what's on the social studies page, there's not gonna be any more work, any rewriting of those for at least the cycle will be 5 years before we hit on that again. Will they then be implemented for the coming year? We have an official statement on that somewhere. I have to go back and look that up, but it's the idea that I think something around in social studies, so there's not a test, right? I know some groups are working on, it's going to be part of, or was going to be part of this coming year. It's that idea that they are the revised standards, they are what are supposed to be taught, that implementation, and again, please forgive me if I'm not hitting my exact words from the state, I haven't had this question in a long time. We expect that you roll them out in the timely manner that fits into the work that you are doing. Now, like math, ELA, science, they have tests associated with them that by certain years, those tests will reflect that. We don't see that in social studies. I oftentimes say that if you're doing good quality social studies to begin with, we didn't make any major significant changes. We had an emphasis on personal finance, or clarification of personal finance, an emphasis on Maine Native Americans, but there really was not a lot of changes that were necessary if you were doing good quality curricular work.
So Sarah, I can answer that. We're currently working on that in our district. We're redoing, so the standards are already set, but we are working on the alignment for K-12. But it was put on hold because we're doing remote learning now, but we started to do the PDs and figure out like what K is doing and what 4 is doing so that there was no overlapping. So we're in the process of doing that right now. And then Sarah, you had a question about like the social studies textbook. 3rd grade, we don't have a social studies textbook. So there was nothing that was sent home for our kiddos. Does that answer your question?
So Sarah, you were asking a little more directly to Ellsworth then, and then Sarah Brown. What is your take? Sarah, I'll get to your question in 1 second. So I did drop, we are over time. I appreciate those who are still here. I put a survey in if you want to provide feedback. And as long as you answer the last question as yes, that you completed the webinar, it will email you a contact hour certificate if that's something you're needing to do. So we'll circle back to that. I just know people are dropping and I would hate for them to have missed out on that. What is my take on a textbook for social studies in elementary school? I didn't do awesome. Kim, I can help you with that. Just send me an email. We're back. Okay, so many questions. A textbook, I think, can be a guiding piece to kind of help give you some structure to where you're at. For me, I love primary sources and inquiry. If I have the choice, because what I run into is people say, well, what about this and what about this? And I say, yes. If you tell me those kids, thank you, Kim. If you tell me all those kids are going to get an hour of social studies time every day and can do X, Y, Z, thank you, Gina, and you can do X, Y, Z, then great. Then yes, we can do all these pieces. But what I'm hearing, especially in the younger grades, right, it's, you know, maybe 20 or 30 minutes every other day type stuff. And for that, I always worry, Sam Weinberg, his latest book is Why Learn History When It's Already on Your Phone. And I think he summarizes such a lot of great work because it's the idea, like we grew up, a lot of us, right? It was names and dates and memorize the 50 states and capitals and this, that, and all of that's on your phone, right? Or you ask Google or Alexa or stuff like that. But the things that really transfer across is, regardless of its main history, US history or world history or young kids or middle school or high school, is can you give them like a diary entry or a picture and just say, so what do you think about this? What do you think the people in here are doing? What do you think they're feeling? How come this person said that it's really, really good to live here and this person said it's not so good to live here? Why is there a difference of, oh, this was the queen and this was a peasant or whatever, right? Can they get into the depths of that? Because then those same issues are going to come up, right, the next year or 2 years or 3 years, because social studies is that really just engaging piece that doesn't have answers. There is not a right answer. A lot of times, right, we can say, what's the capital of Augusta, or what's the capital of Maine? But I say my favorite question is, where should the capital of Maine be? And tell me why. Should it still be in Augusta? Should it be Portland? What's your criteria? Most people, accessibility, geographic location. And if a kid wants to tell me anywhere, like if they say it should be in Ellsworth because of this, great. You know, if they say, well, it's Ellsworth because that's where I live and I love it, you know, I mean, that's not it, right? Because now that skill is argumentation and it's claim, evidence, and reasoning. That's a skill that will transfer across. That's what they're going to do in an AP class as seniors, and they can be doing that in 2nd grade, 3rd grade, 4th grade, right? The topics are different. What's better, chocolate ice cream or vanilla? Tell me why, right? That's a claims, evidence, reasoning piece. Where should the capital be? What's your favorite color? Should we have dogs or cats as pets, right? That starts to evolve into questions like, did we do a good job with the plague and the Black Death of the, you know, of the medieval times? Who is more important, the king or Leonardo da Vinci, right? You get them to start wrestling with that. And I think a lot of times that stuff isn't found in a textbook, because textbooks are a narrative, a simple, very concise. I always point out that there's no footnotes in or citations in textbooks, because it's really just that overview piece of that generalization, which has merits at some level if you understand that that's what it is. Research from Keith Barton at Indiana University says that kids believe that textbooks are the most accurate form of information. Yet nobody cites a textbook when doing historical research, right? So if you're a historian, you do not use a textbook, but kids think it's the most reliable. And that's a gap that we need to do. So Jeffrey Noakes, in some of his work, talk about have a kids write a page of a textbook. How would they rewrite? How do they do that, right? Because there are some cues and framing to a textbook that you would need to include. But if kids can understand how to write one, it helps them better understand what's actually in that book on its own. And again, the last little piece before I get off my soapbox, at least till the next question, is like, I love the work because I think we've kind of got this upper elementary kind of grade level people here, is that Bruce Van Sledright at University of North Carolina, Charlotte, he does his work, or he's done work, and he says, like, if kids don't wrestle with these inconsistencies, right? This person said yes, this person said no. When asking, I think it was fourth graders, and they said, okay, so we gave Tammy one piece of information, we gave Sarah another. And then when they compare them, the students just think that the other group of students are just lying. Well, why would they say it? Well, they're lying. Well, no, that's what they're in for. They can't process, or they struggle to process, that two different people in the same place at the same time would have different opinions in that historical sense. Although I say kids are going to understand it perfectly if you were to say, well, have you ever gotten a fight on the playground and it was, he pushed me first, no, she pushed me first, no, he, right? We have disagreements like that all the time, yet we oftentimes teach history as it's one right answer, there's one single narrative that we will go through. So can you use a textbook? Yes. Just understand that to bring in multiple pieces, the textbook's not the only answer, and to give students the room to kind of wrestle with some of those things about, okay, well, why is the textbook talking about this? And let's think about who else should we include in the textbook, right? You know, just different ways to wrestle with that information is my very, very long answer to your simple question. Other questions for Jen or me? Thank you for staying over. We went a little slow in the introduction because of a variety of reasons, and
Thank you, Sarah.
turns out we filled an hour.